Hello, this is a quick summary of the new features in FS Instant Approach version 1.5.1 by FS Inventions. After this summary, there will be a summary of the new features that were introduced in the previous version 1.4, and then that will be followed by a complete description of all aspects of the program. So, the new features in version 1.5.1 can be seen by looking at the flight plan screen, which is what we have on the screen here. We have two new sections. One is for the approach altitude and one is for the runway length filter. The approach altitude was added at the request of several users who wanted to be able to specifically set an altitude at which the approach will start. It's very important to point out that this is an optional feature. It is not at all required of the pilot that the altitude be specified, and if it is not, then the altitude is set automatically by the program based on the distance that the pilot has determined to start the approach from the runway. So it's there if you wish to use it. The second new section that has been added to version 1.5.1 is the runway length filter. This works like the other filters in FS Instant Approach, which filter what sort of airports and runways you will get if you use the Approach Random Airport button. So, for example, if I wanted to use this new feature, and I wanted, let's say, for example, my runway length to have a minimum length, let's say a minimum length of 13,000 feet with no upper limit. So we will go ahead and click on the Approach Random Airport, and we will get a randomly selected airport that has a length that is at minimum 13,000 feet, and we can see that this one is considerably over that amount. That could be useful, for example, if we wanted to make sure that we've got a good long runway because we're coming in with a large heavy jet, let's say, for example. On the other hand, we might wish to say that the runway length has a maximum, let's say a maximum of 1750, and I'll clear the minimum. So now what this means, of course, is that the maximum length is 1750 feet and we have no minimum length. So if we now go ahead and ask for a random airport, we will get a random airport such as Moondance Ranch, and we can see that this one has a length of 1700 feet. This can be useful, as you might imagine, for practicing approaches to short fields, which can be challenging. And then, of course, if you wish, after you've landed, of course, you can also then do a short field takeoff. Practice those if you'd like. And of course you can use these in any combination you wish. So for example, I might want to say that I want a runway that is at minimum 4,000 feet and at maximum 6,000 feet. So you can play with those. This of course can be used in combination with all the other features which filter what sort of airports and runways you're going to get when you click on the Approach Random Airport button. And that about wraps up the two handy new features that we've added to FS Instant Approach version 1.5.1, and the rest of this video, as I mentioned at the beginning, will now continue with a quick summary of the features in 1.4, followed by a full description of the rest of the program. And I'll just let us get on to that right now. Hello. In this video I'm going to give you a quick look at the new feature that we've added to FS Instant Approach version 1.4, and then the remainder of the video will be a complete description of the features of FS Instant Approach. The new feature that we've added in version 1.4 is the ability to set the visibility for our approach. We can do this, as is normally the case, we would pick an approach airport, for example, or we could pick a random airport that we want to do our approach at, and then in this section down here we can set the visibility for the approach. So let's say, for example, we wanted the visibility to be 2 miles perhaps. What this means now is that we can set all these other options, of course, if we wish: the winds, the elevation of the runway, we can set gusting winds and so forth, the time of day. And when we press connect, we will then cause Flight Simulator to put us on approach to that airport with, in this particular case, just to draw attention to the feature of version 1.4, we now have visibility set at 2 miles. We can then fly that approach, and then when we've finished, we can come right back to this and practice another approach at another airport. We can pick another airport by entering a code in here if we wish, or we can pick a random airport, select our runway, and then connect again. So what it means is that over and over, probably taking only about 5 or 10 minutes for each approach, we can practice many approaches at many airports all over the world with exactly the conditions that we want. So that's the new feature, visibility. Controller visibility is the new feature that we've added to FS Instant Approach version 1.4. And now this video will continue by going into a video that we've made previously, which gives a complete overview of all the features of FS Instant Approach. Hi, this is a quick overview of FS Instant Approach for FSX and Flight Simulator 2004 by FS Inventions. We've just published version 1.3, which has got some new features, and so I'd like to give an overview of the entire product, and then we'll end up discussing the new features in version 1.3. FS Instant Approach is an add-on program for Flight Simulator X and Flight Simulator 2004. It runs at the same time as Flight Simulator, and the purpose of the program is to enable you to set up very quickly, with minimal effort, the aircraft on approach at any runway in the world, and you've got lots of different parameters that you can change as well to make the approach set up just exactly the way that you would like it. The program has 4 separate screens. You begin at the information screen, which gives you an overview of how to get the program started, and then most of the work is done at the flight plan screen here, and it's this screen I will now discuss in detail. The first thing that you can do is you can enter the code of the airport that you wish to perform an approach to, so you can just enter that directly in here. So for example, we might decide that we want to do an approach to Chicago, and then if I click the approach airport button, we will then see the information on Chicago, and over here we've got a list of runways at Chicago that we can choose from to do our approach at, and of course as we click on that we'll see the information on the runway changing over here. Alternatively, we can approach a random airport. This is a very popular feature because it basically takes us all around the world flying at different airports and landing at different runways, and it can be an interesting way to practice your approaches. And to do that, all we have to do is to click on the Approach Random Airport button, and so here for example we're in Trenton, we click it again, we're at Ashdown, and if we click it we'll be going all around the world to different airports, and of course those different airports are going to have their runway information here. Now if we want to, we can control what type of random airport we're going to get when we click on the Random Airport button. We've got quite a few controls that enable us to do that. We've got a filter which enables us to tell FS Instant Approach the initial letters in the airport code, and this will tend to restrict the random airports that we're looking at by geographical region. So for example, if I put a K in here and then I say Approach Random Airport, I'm only going to get airports that have an airport code that begins with K. Alternatively, I can type as many letters as I like in here. Alternatively, I might say EG, and if I approach a random airport, now I'm going to get airports, as we can see, airports that are in United Kingdom, which is what EG means in the ICAO code. Alternatively, I could say EK, and then if I click on this random airport, I'm going to get airports, for example, in Denmark. So we can filter that there. If we want just any old airport, then we'll get rid of that. We can also filter by runway types. So for example, if I want to practice approaches to runways that have the instrument landing system, ILS, I can turn that on, ILS only. So now I will only get ILS runways. So if I approach random airports, we will see that I'm getting ILS information here. That's the ILS frequency, which I would need to tune into my Nav1 radio. That can be done automatically. We'll get to that in a moment. And approach another airport, and again we're only now getting ILS airports. Alternatively, let's say I specifically don't want ILS airports, so I can go to the opposite of saying no ILS, and I will not get ILS airports over here. And then alternatively, of course, we can have all types included, and that's what the all switch is for there. Now we can also filter the type of runway we get by runway elevation. So if I turn this on, now I could, for example, say that we've got the minimum and maximum elevation here. So let's say I wanted the minimum elevation to be 10,000 feet. So now if we go for random airports, we're going to get airports that are way up there. We've got 12,000 feet on this randomly selected airport, and we've got 11,000 feet here, and we're probably going to see a lot of airports, for example, in South America. Alternatively, we've got a minimum and maximum. We can set them both, or one or the other. Alternatively, for example, we might say that we want the maximum. If we go over here, we want the maximum elevation to be sea level. So now if I select a random airport, I'm going to tend to get airports, well, I'm going to get airports that are below sea level, as we can see, and there's Amsterdam there at 11 feet below sea level. So we can play with this and select whatever we like, or if we just want all kinds of airports, then we can turn it off. It's up to us. That's how we determine what sort of random airport we like. But whether we're using a random airport or a specific airport, we can indicate the number of nautical miles that we want to start out from the runway when we start our approach, so we can select that from there. We select our runway, of course, the specific runway that we want to land at, and we can also set our initial approach speed from this drop down here. So we select our approach speed there, and that's the speed that we'll start out with on our approach. We can also ask FS Instant Approach to automatically tune the radio. If the runway has the instrument landing system, ILS, if we check this box here, then FS Instant Approach will automatically tune Navigation Radio 1 to the frequency of the ILS system at the runway that we're approaching. We can also have Instant Approach set the omni-bearing selector on Navigation Radio 1 to the heading of the runway we're approaching, and that's available on certain aircraft, and that will help guide us in as well. And finally, we can also ask that if ATIS is available, that's the frequency of ATIS is shown here. If it's available, then we can have the Automatic Terminal Information Service tuned into COM Radio 2, so that we can listen to that as soon as the approach starts as well. So all that can be done automatically if you so desire. Additionally, we can set the local time of day. And what this will do is, if we turn this checkbox on here, we can force the local time of day when we start our approach to be a particular time. And as you can imagine, this is useful if you want to practice daytime approaches. You might set this to noon, for example. If you want to practice nighttime approaches, so I don't know, we might pick for some particular reason we might pick 2:15 in the morning, and then we can be pretty certain that we're going to get darkness. Of course, the darkness will depend on the time of year and the latitude of the runway that we're approaching. So that's a handy feature there for practicing certain types of approaches. And then Finally, what's new to us in version 1.3 is we have the ability to control the surface wind during our approach. If we want to control the surface wind, then we turn this checkbox on here, and then we can set again, this is of course optional, we can set the surface wind in knots. So let's say we want a 10 knot wind, for example, and we can decide the direction of the wind, which we can specify in one of two ways. So if we say, for example, we're landing at, in this case we're landing at runway 4, so that's more or less is going to be something in the region of 40 degrees is our heading there. So let's say we've got a wind that's slightly off to the side at 60 degrees, so we've got the wind at 60 degrees at 10 knots. We can do it that way, or the other way, the other option we have, and these two are mutually exclusive, you can't do them both at the same time. The other option instead of that is to turn on this checkbox here, which enables us to set the relative wind direction. Now what that's done is it's cleared the direction that we specified there, because instead what we're going to do is we're going to say, let's say for example we want a left crosswind coming in from about 45 degrees basically, off the nose of the aircraft, and so that means that we're going to get wind coming from that direction, or if we want it straight in front of us we have there, or of course we have these other options on the other sides of the control here. So that's just a quick way to specify if we want the wind coming from a direction based on the position of the direction rather of the aircraft. But if you want to specifically enter it in degrees, then turn that off and go over here, and you can enter the specific amount that you the specific direction, excuse me, that you want right there. Final thing you can do with surface wind is if you're feeling bold and adventurous, you can turn on the surface wind gusts. These can be very severe, so they should be used with caution. It makes the plane very difficult to control, but it is a challenge, and also the severity of the gust increases with the wind speed as well. So if you have very low wind speeds, the gusts are not going to be too bad, but as the wind speed gets higher, the gusts are going to be extremely severe. And the other thing, of course, that we can do, let's see, before moving on to the flight mapping, what I should mention is once you've set all this up, and of course if you want to, you can just I've shown us through all the options here, but if you want to, you can just click approach random airport. Your basic values are okay, and you click connect. When you click connect, that then sets up the approach in FSX. It puts the aircraft on approach to the runway that you've chosen with all the parameters that are entirely optional. But if you just wanted to do a quick one, then you literally click random airport, connect, and you're away. And then in FSX, the scenario will be prepared for you, and then all you have to do is pop back to FSX and fly your approach. Then you land, and once you've landed, you can come back to this screen and click, ask for another random airport, click, click, click a few more times if you want something different, and then click connect, and then you're on approach again to another airport. The final thing I wanted to mention then is the flight mapping, and that is that after you have landed and completed your approach, you will be able to click on the flight mapping buttons, which will show you the route of the flight that you took on the Google Maps website, and you'll be able to look at your routes there projected onto either a map or onto a satellite image, and that can be very interesting. And all those flights that you've made are stored, and you can then, if you wish, you could even copy the web address or URL of the map that you're looking at, and email it to friends if you want them to be able to see the map as well. They don't have to have FSX, or they don't have to have FS Instant Approach to be able to look at that information. And that just about wraps it up. That's an overview of FS Instant Approach, which is available from the FS Inventions website. And that's it, and also yeah, a quick reference to the new features in version 1.3. So I hope you've enjoyed this overview, and have fun, and happy landings.